All right. Hello. This is the first video in your Ayurveda education as part of the Yoga Body Blast program. So I kind of wanted to just reiterate that you guys should have received a PowerPoint. And I find it more helpful to have an actual hands-on PowerPoint in my hands. That way I can use it to take notes and such. Actually, I'm going to staple this just for my own benefit. I should have done this before. There we go. So you'll see that I've broken down the Ayurveda or this Ayurveda PowerPoint into 4 videos. And I just kind of want to break down what's in this to help give you a better understanding of how you can become your own healer. And that's the amazing thing about Ayurveda. So before we go into the first video, which is what is Ayurveda and the history of where it comes from, let me kind of give you a little bit of my personal background and how I came across Ayurveda. So I started in the gym over 20 years ago. And I started my journey as a fitness professional teaching step aerobics. Back when it was like the thing to do. And I remember just falling in love with the choreography and the music and like creating a tribe. So I started doing group fitness. I did that for a number of years, about 4 or 5 years. And then naturally, right, the next step for a lot of group fitness instructors is, well, personal training. So let me see if I can get into the gym just outside of the actual fitness studio and into the actual gym and work with clients on more of a one-on-one basis. So I did that. And that's when I kind of started questioning, what is health? So over the years, I have had a number of coworkers who did like fitness competitions and were trying to get sponsors, and some of them succeeded. And some of them would do these competitions and like place and bring home trophies, and it was so inspiring, because they have the 6-pack and they're just so ripped and cut. And at one point, probably in my late 20s, early 30s, I thought, well, let me give this a go. Like, I'm going to try to do fitness competitions. And I realized then, talking to people who had done them, that in order for me to develop the kind of muscle that I needed to actually be competitive, I would have to start taking a ton of supplements. And I was like, okay, I don't really want to do that, because even before I knew about holistic health, something about filling my body with a bunch of pills and powders just didn't sit well with me. So then I thought, okay, well, there are natural fitness competitions. Well, let me see if I can do that. So I kind of got into that, but even that was it didn't seem natural to me. And putting my foot into that world is when I realized that these physical bodies that we, society, associates with like health and fitness is actually the opposite. Because getting to know the competitors, I realized every single one of them, I've never met a healthy fitness competitor. So many of them were suffering from digestive issues, from ulcers, from insomnia, from mental health issues, from having to put that stress and pressure on themselves, especially the women, to constantly have to look like that. And here's the conclusion that I came to, is that if you have to manipulate your body so much so that you have to rely on all these extra supplements and these extra techniques to be able to look like that, fit that physical aesthetic, then it's not natural for the body to look like that. So you might have all these ripped muscles on the outside, but on the inside, your digestive system is just trashed. And so there's no changing the mindset of like the big gym culture. And so that's when I took a step back and I was like, okay, I don't want to do this. This is not for me. So I went back into teaching and working one-on-one with clients. And a lot of clients would come in and say, hey, I want to look like her. Or hey, I want to lose an extra 5 to 10 pounds. And I'd be like, but like your body's not going to lose another 5 to 10 pounds because you're already healthy. So where are we going to lose these extra 5 pounds? And so I'd have these conversations with clients, and then I would kind of try to push them more towards like, maybe what we need to work on is self-acceptance and mental health, because physically, with all of the assessments that personal trainers do, like physically, you're healthy, you're fine. There's other than vanity and trying to fit into society standards of what fit looks like there's nothing wrong with you. So then I shifted my focus more towards senior citizens, because the whole mindset of senior citizens is completely different. At this point in their lives, they're not trying to look like anything. They're just trying to stay healthy and keep their bodies mobile and agile and keep up enough strength and endurance to be able to live active lives. And so that I fell in love with. Once I was working with senior citizens or active agers, I came across a yoga program and I thought, I'm going to get certified in yoga. But at the same time, they were offering Ayurveda training, and I had no idea what that was. I had never heard of it before. But there was something in me that was saying, like, go do this. And so I signed up for the Ayurveda Health Educator program. It was over a year long of training. It cost over $2,000. And I jumped in and I was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing. I have no idea what this is. But here we go. But as soon as I started learning about this ancient science, like I fell in love, because everything about it made so much sense to me. And as somebody who was coming from the gym world and the world of personal training and fitness coaching, I was like, yes, real health comes from the inside. And Ayurveda also teaches us, it accepts the fact that like a little bit of fat on the body is actually a good thing. It's protective. It helps us function better, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Another thing that really resonated with me from Ayurveda is the people who, I guess, developed Ayurveda over 5,000 years ago acknowledge that there's more than one body that we need to take into consideration when we are trying to achieve optimal health. So we have the physical body, right, that is manifested here in this realm, what you see and you touch, the skin, the bones, and the blood. That's the physical body. But we also have an emotional body that comes from here. And that's where a lot of traumas get stuck and reside. And if left untreated, those traumas will eventually start to manifest in the physical body. Oftentimes, you'll see things like depression, anxiety, insomnia, even heart disease and high blood pressure. Oftentimes, the root cause of those ailments is not even part of the physical body. It's part of the emotional body. So I found that fascinating. So Ayurveda also acknowledges an intellectual body. What happens here can also affect this and the physical body. So it's all tied together. And if you read some of the latest studies done by a number of well-recognized medical institutions, there is a lot of modern science that is stating that there is a huge connection between the mind and the gut. And what happens in the gut is going to affect the mind and vice versa. So what fascinated me, also being a bit of a history nerd, is that you have these ancient rishis, they're kind of like medicine men, that were saying this 5,000 years ago without laboratories and scientific studies and medical experts. And they already knew this 5,000 years ago. So that, again, I fell in love with that aspect of it. So we have the physical body, the emotional body, right? The intellectual body. And finally, we also have the spiritual body. The spiritual body, if you believe in auras, would be something of the aura. If you're a Christian, it would be more of the soul. If you're a new age kind of spiritual believer, it would just be your energy, right? The energy that you put out. So really, whatever spiritual belief you have, you can acknowledge that there is a spiritual connection that we have to something that science still can't put its hands on. But most of us acknowledge it because we have felt it in some form or another during our lives. So the science of Ayurveda acknowledges that the spiritual body is just as valid and important as the physical body. All right. So learning about all of this stuff, I absolutely fell in love with this knowledge. And I will forever be a student of the ancient sciences of health from here on out. I have maintained my group fitness certifications over the years. I am no longer a personal trainer. So if you are looking to run a marathon or looking to compete in a fitness competition or looking to lose 5 extra pounds or trying to get a 6-pack, I am not the person for you. I know a number of very talented trainers that I can refer you to, but otherwise that's not me. That's not what I do, and I just don't. So with that said, all right, so that's my background on how I came to fall in love with Ayurveda. And I really want to incorporate that in this Yoga Body Blast program just to give you kind of like a foundation or a basic knowledge as to how you can become your own healer by just learning to listen to your body, okay? So let's go over this PowerPoint. So the first page in the PowerPoint is daily practices, and you'll see that I have put here consistent morning and evening routines, tongue scraping, oil pulling, abhyanga, eye wash, jalaneti, triphala, CCFT, yoga and exercise, and finally prayer and meditation. So as we go through the 6-week program, I'll go more into these and describe them in detail to see if it's something that you would actually like to fit into your lifestyle. Okay, but just to give you an overview. The second page on the PowerPoint, you will see, is just like the title page, an introduction to an ancient system of healing. And then we go into what is Ayurveda. So that's really what this first video is about. We're just going to cover the basics of what is Ayurveda, where does it come from, and maybe give it a little credibility in your eyes, because the modern Western world tends to poo-poo on anything that isn't of the modern Western world. I mean, basically that's what it is. So What is Ayurveda? I'm going to tell you here that it originates in India. So it came out of India. It's over 5,000 years old. And Ayurveda translated into English from Sanskrit, because the Ayurvedic texts were written in Sanskrit, which is the first known written language in human history. The translation is the knowledge of life, or the science of life, meaning it encompasses everything. So it's not just medicine, it's not just exercise, it's not just biology. It encompasses everything, because everything in life is going to affect us and our health and how we react to life. In order for you to begin to use Ayurveda to help understand your body, you have to know your constitution. And we'll go into that later, and I'll describe to you what a constitution is. You also have to know your present nature, or prakriti, including any imbalances that you might be going through. And then you also have to understand the nature of medicine. And so we'll kind of go into that. Let's kind of pause here for a second. And if you're taking notes on this, great, because I'm a big note taker. As I said, Ayurveda means the science of life. It's a traditional healing system of India and Southeast Asia. It's 5,000 years old. Some texts actually date it back even further than 5,000 years. And also very interesting, even though many in the Western world have never heard of it, the World Health Organization actually recognizes it as one of the world's main medical systems. So just because we don't practice it here in the United States doesn't mean that it's not recognized in other parts of the world. So again, I find that fascinating. It is registered under the World Health Organization as a medical practice. And Ayurveda, like I said, it's not so cut and dry, because it does recognize that we have these other bodies, emotional bodies and spiritual bodies, and that's really hard for science and mainstream thinking to kind of wrap their heads around. So if you're like a super logical person who needs like data and facts and statistics, and like, I recommend that you just kind of take a deep breath, try to open your mind a little bit, and really listen to what Ayurveda has to say. It works within the natural cycles of life. So it recognizes that everything in life has ebbs and flows, right? If we just look at the seasons, winter is an ebb where everything kind of retreats and takes time for rest. And then we have spring, where everything kind of wakes up and blossoms again and is ready to produce life. And then we have summer, which is the climax of life. You know, that's when we start producing in nature. Nature starts producing fruits and vegetables. And then we go into autumn, where everything kind of starts to dry up, and we consider that harvest time because we're getting ready for the retreat, right? So everything in life, from nature to the seasons, to us, to our bodies, to the time of day when the sun rises and is at its peak versus when it sets, or, you know, when the moon comes out. Everything in life has its ebbs and flows. If you've been married like I have for 20 years, you can also recognize that relationships have their ebbs and flows. There's times in my marriage where everything is great and everything is flowing and we are seeing everything eye to eye. And then there have been times in my marriage or in relationships in general where, I mean, there's just this barrier and we just can't seem to get through it. Again, the cycles of life, the ebbs and flows. And then when it comes to fitness, I also, again, coming from the fitness background, I see these ebbs and flows as a woman who is now in her 40s as also part of womanhood and living in this modern Western world where so much of a woman's value is placed on her physical appearance, I'm getting to an age and a phase in my life where it's becoming harder and harder to try to maintain society's standards of what beauty and fitness is. And recognizing with Ayurveda that my body changing, no matter how much I exercise, no matter how much I diet, it's just part of the ebbs and flows of life. And that does kind of help me transition into the next phase that I know is bound to come sooner rather than later. So the science of Ayurveda, when learning to listen to ourselves and what our bodies need for optimal health, is recognizing what phase of life are you in and what does the environment around you look like? What are the seasons? Because when it's winter and it's very dry and cold outside, you're going to feel that physically and emotionally and possibly intellectually. For me, for example, my skin gets so dry, like my knuckles and my hands in the winter. I feel like I just can't put enough lotion on. My hands are always dry. My hair gets more dry. My digestion feels more dry. And in the summer, then I tend to get more like oily. And even emotionally, me being a very strong pitta dominant person, I get very hot, not only physically, but intellectually. I'm a lot more quick to snap, and I'm a little shorter on the temper. But understanding Ayurveda and the doshas and the different body types and the energies that are around us and within us does help me it gives me the knowledge to better handle any ailments or off-balance moments that I might be having. So that's also another fascinating thing about Ayurveda. As I said before, it considers the mind, body, and spirit connection as essential to optimal health. So you can't be physically fit and ignore your emotional and intellectual and spiritual bodies and expect to be a healthy person, or vice versa. You can't be an emotionally healthy person, but then sit on the couch all day eating junk food and expect to be an overall healthy person. So in order for us to be, I guess, working and living at our optimal best, we have to take into consideration all of these aspects, the mind, the body, and the spirit, in order for us to feel our best. When the mind isn't right, I say this all the time. I say this to my clients. I post it on my social media. When the mind is not right, the physical part doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And again, I'm going to revert back to the gym because that's my background. So for me, I relate all of this stuff to the gym culture and big corporate gyms. How many times have you gone to the gym and there's, in my experience, this big, like muscular, like physically beautiful man, and then you meet him and he's a total jerk. And you're like, dude, like, you're so arrogant and full of yourself and vain and shallow that, like, your mind is obviously not right. And then it doesn't matter how physically attractive that man is. Like, you don't want to have, you're like, nope, don't want to have anything to do with you. So that's what I mean when I say, if the mind isn't right, the physical doesn't matter. Because eventually, whatever negative toxicity is going on up here is going to manifest itself in the physical body in the form of like ulcers or like high blood pressure, or in some cases, even cancers. And we'll go into that more, in other videos. The focus of Ayurveda, another thing that I absolutely love about it, is that the focus is on preventative medicine and healthcare rather than the treatment of a disease. So eventually, I do want to become an Ayurvedic practitioner so that I can actually help people with diseases and ailments. But for now, I can just kind of educate you guys on this, and hopefully you'll become as fascinated about it as I am. By paying attention and becoming aware of ourselves and our needs and how our bodies react to certain foods and even certain like aromas and climates, we're better able to understand how to best give ourselves preventative treatment so that we don't ever get to the point where we're having to treat disease. Okay. And of course, again, in modern day Western world, one of the biggest diseases that we all face is cancer, unfortunately. So many cancers, and not all of them. I understand that some of cancers are genetic and some cancers come from, exposure to toxins in the environment that we have no control over. But many cancers, over half of them, are really preventative if we just understand what we're doing to our bodies. And that all starts with self-awareness, learning to listen to your body and understand what it needs. And that's different for everyone. So one of the tenets of Ayurveda is that what is medicine for one person can be poison for another. So there are no big, general health advices in Ayurveda. Now doing what I do, I've had clients ask me, can you give me just like a general food plan? And I'm like, that's not what I do, because I have to take into consideration your body type, your digestive type, your emotional state, and your current lifestyle and whatever patterns that you have going on in your life right now before I can give you a food plan. Because there are certain foods that would work really well for one person, but would actually hurt and make another person sick. So with that said, it's all about preventative disease and learning your body. So that we prevent disease or do the best that we can in preventing disease. The beginning point in this, or the starting point in learning how to listen to your body, is learning about digestion and learning how important digestion is. Of course, the digestion of foods being one of the most obvious and important forms of digestion, but also recognizing that it's not only about food. So we are constantly absorbing things and digesting them through all 5 of our senses. All right. So what we eat is going to affect our health, but also what we see, what we hear, what we smell, and what we touch is getting absorbed into our bodies and being digested. And that digestion or process of digestion through the 5 senses is either helping us be healthy by bringing us into a state of balance and harmony within ourselves, or is creating an imbalance and internal chaos and pushing us closer and closer to ailments and eventually disease, right? So what we want to learn how our bodies absorb and digest not only food, but the experiences around us. And then use the elements within everything that we absorb to help keep us in balance as often as possible, right? Because we're all going to get thrown off balance here and there. That's just life. Again, it's part of the ebbs and flows of life. It's a natural cycle. But if we can learn to recognize when we're off balance, then we can also learn how to bring us back into balance as soon as possible. And we do that to prevent you know, not ailments, because sometimes we do experience ailments when we're off balance, but to ultimately prevent any serious diseases. I hope this is all making sense to you. And if not, please DM me. We can, or take down notes, any questions that you have. My dog is crazy, and that's one of the things that we all have to deal with working at home through this pandemic. I'm sorry. But yeah, so as we're going through this, I hope this is making sense to you. And please write down any questions that are coming up so that when we have our weekly one-on-one consults, we can discuss these, all right? And I can help you better understand everything that I'm trying to explain to you. As I said before, what is medicine for one person can be poison for another. So I would never recommend the same like diet or any type of anything to just a generalized group of people without getting to know them first and without getting to know their constitution and their property. So that's what we're going to delve into next here. This is going to be the longest video, all right, because it's the intro and I want to give you guys like a good understanding of what Ayurveda is. So let's talk about Prakriti and Vikriti. This is your constitution. Some of the terms are taken from Sanskrit, and there is no translation. There is no English translation for them. So you're just going to learn some Sanskrit terms here, which is great. You know, it's a language that's 5,000 years old. Like, how cool is that? A Prakriti and a Vikriti. So this is another fascinating concept to me that when it first sunk in, just like blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everyone is born with a unique combination of elements, which is referred to as a dosha. This unique combination of elements is determined at the moment of your conception. So I like to think of it as almost like an energetic fingerprint. So if you think of all the billions of people that are walking around planet Earth right now, every single one of us looks different, but every single one of us also has a unique fingerprint. My fingerprint is not going to be like any other humans on the planet, ever. Think about that. That is amazing. So Ayurveda, and that's part of the physical manifested body that we all recognize in the modern Western world. But what the Eastern cultures also recognize is that energetically and even physiologically, we also have a unique set of components that matches the elements that we're all exposed to. I hope you're understanding this. I can get really geeked out about this and just go on and on about like, whoa! So my dosha is different than my husband's and my son's and my daughter's and my friends and my neighbors and my mom's and my sisters. And no dosha is ever the same for any person. But in order for it to be more easily digested, for us to understand, Ayurveda breaks the doshas down into 5 elements. And then from those 5 elements, they break it down into 3 doshas. Take your notes. So the 5 elements, which we will get into later, are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So if you think of the periodic table of elements that we all learned when we were in middle school, and we had to memorize that little thing, every single one of those elements fits into one of the 5 dosha elements. So if you think of CO2, for example, we all know what CO2 is. CO2 would fit into the fire element. All right? Or I'm trying to think. So what is iron? I don't remember what the periodic component of iron is, but iron, for example, would fit into the earth element. Okay? So again, it's fascinating that you had these ancient medicine men 5,000 years ago were called rishis. So it's fascinating that over 5,000 years ago, you had these rishis who knew all this without modern science. And then maybe within the last couple hundred years, like modern man has just started to rediscover what they already knew over 5,000 years ago. Again, fascinating. And that's, I'm a big history nerd too, so I can get geeked out on history. Right? So we're born with a unique dosha, which is based on the 5 elements at the moment of conception. And that is referred to as your prakriti. Okay, that's the Sanskrit word for that. A vikriti would be the elements that you have within you right now. So a vikriti is any imbalance that you might have in your body. And most of us are imbalanced. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way that we live our lives these days. You know, so many of us, excuse me, sit in front of a computer. So that makes us imbalanced right there. So many of us are literally tied to these stupid things. And I call it stupid because I really wish cell phones were never existed or invented. But unfortunately, it's like a necessary part of our everyday lives now. Those stupid things create a lot of imbalance in all of us. So then on top of that, right, your commute in traffic, back and forth to work. If you're a mom with very active kids and you're constantly running around and trying to get everything done, that's going to create an imbalance. If you're, it's just life. It's the life that we live in nowadays. So that your current constitution or makeup of doshas and elements is referred to as your vikriti, whereas prakriti is the constitution that you were born with, or the constitution that is within you during the moment of conception. Now, as we go through life, all right, as the years go by and we're exposed to different traumas and different environments and different experiences, and we get off balance, the main purpose of an Ayurvedic practitioner with a client is to bring that client as close or back to balance as close as possible to their original constitution at the moment of conception. I hope that makes sense. If not, write down your questions. We'll talk about it during our consult. Okay. So as I said, the 3 doshas, right? So we have the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Well, those 5 elements are broken up into 3 doshas. And the 3 doshas are vata, pitta, and kapha. Vata dosha is made up of ether and air. So the ether and air elements make up vata dosha. Pitta dosha is made up of predominantly fire with some oily water mixed in. So a very hot, acidic, oily liquid, which is considered water. And then kapha dosha is made up of earth and water. And we're going to go into those doshas and how when you start to understand the doshas, how you will see it everywhere. You'll see it in people, and you'll see it in like things and experiences, and you're like, oh, that is a pitta imbalance right there. So imbalance occurs when we're exposed to an environment that throws us off our original constitution of elements and doshas. The imbalance can occur with our diet. It can occur with the climate, the seasons, the people that we're exposed to, work, your schedule. Some work schedules are completely so off circadian rhythms that it will knock you out of balance. So an example of that would be a doctor who has to work the midnight shift, or my son. My son is in the United States Navy serving, and there are some times where he has to stand duty and his watch is from like 2 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, his circadian rhythms are so off balance right now. And literally everything that we take in and absorb through the 5 senses. All right. So everything we see, we taste, we touch, we smell, and we hear can either bring us into balance or knock us off balance. The nature of medicine, and again, we're going to go further into all of this stuff later. The nature of medicine has the goal, and the goal of the nature of medicine is to bring us back into alignment with our Prakriti, or as close to our Prakriti as possible. And we do this by using the qualities within the elements, within the doshas. I know. Let it soak in. Okay. So those are my notes for video 1. What is Ayurveda? Let me just kind of go over this PowerPoint, make sure I covered everything before I let you go. One thing I do want to say that is in one of the slides, the nature of medicine. All right, I have here, very important. Ayurveda is a science based on personal responsibility. Now, I'm a big advocate of personal responsibility. Again, I'm going to relate this to my experience working in the gym. So many people. This is where, like, I'm not going to sugarcoat things, and I can come across a little harsh. And I don't mean to, but again, and I'm not using Pitta as an excuse, but I know now that is just my Pitta predominant personality. Like, it's really hard for me to soften up these things. I'm a very, like, straight to the point, just tell it like it is kind of person. So Ayurveda is a science of personal responsibility. A lot of people, in my experience in the gym world, like to come into the gym, work with a personal trainer, or take a fitness class and complain about their health without actually taking the steps necessary to fix the health. So when I take on a client at this point in my career, if it's obvious to me that this client is not going to take the steps necessary to actually fix their problems, then again, at this point in my career, like, I'm not going to waste my time with you. Okay. You have to start taking personal responsibility for your own actions and your own health. Okay. The steps are there. If you don't know what steps to take, that's when you hire a coach or a trainer or whatever. And when they're giving you the steps and they're showing you the path that needs to be taken, and then you don't take them, that is considered failure of the intellect. And that responsibility falls solely on you. Period. Okay? An example is I know a number of adults who, when I've been training them in the past, they say things like, what should I be eating? Well, try this, salads, vegetables. And the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, I don't like vegetables. At first, in the beginning of my career, I would try to, when you get trained as a health coach or a personal trainer, a lot of the training focuses on not psychology, but in behavioral change. And so how do we get clients to start changing their behavior? And so in the beginning of my career, I would spend a lot of time trying to use those techniques that I was taught to try to get people to change their personal behavioral patterns. But again, at this point in my career, 20 years in, I'm going to tell people, You're an adult. You are an adult. Suck it up and eat your vegetables. Give me a break. All right, give me a break. If you're the kind of person who's like, I cannot eat vegetables, that going into my Ayurveda training, that probably means that you have such a thick, toxic coat of ama throughout your digestive system that you cannot taste the flavor of fresh fruits and vegetables, which means that you actually need Ayurveda more than anything, because we need to really clean that toxic coat that is probably coating your intestines. There, I went on my little rant. All right. But personal responsibility is a big one. You have to actually take the actions towards improving yourself, your physical health, your emotional health, your intellectual, and your spiritual health. All right. We're going to do this. You got this. All right. Even if it's just baby steps, we got to take one step at a time to get towards growth and health. Okay. So personal responsibility. When we do things that we know we're not supposed to be doing, it is a complete failure of the intellect, and that is all our own fault. And I'm not judging. I know it sounds like I'm judging. There is no judgment in Ayurveda. There is simply cause and effect. That's it. If you eat the cookie, then you're going to experience the effects of the sugar. If you choose to sit on the couch all day, every day, for months and years at a time, you're going to feel the physical effects of sitting on the couch and never moving. It's going to happen. You know, if you eat too much junk food and you never move, you are going to gain massive amounts of weight. Cause and effect. Period. No judgment. All right, but hopefully you're here because that is not you. You have taken the first step in trying to be a healthier, more productive person. And so I absolutely applaud you for that. I commend you for that, because getting started is often the hardest part. So if you're watching this video and you've paid for the program and you've set up your appointment for your consults, then you're on the right track, baby. And we got this. Yes. La la la. All right, and so that's it. That's where we're going to stop for today's video. So this is week 1. Hopefully you've scheduled your consult for week 1 so we can start to get to know each other better, and you can ask any questions about the information that I just gave to you. And then also hopefully you are doing your Yoga Body Blast workout for week 1. It's labeled in the library as YBB1. So do that at least 3 times a week. If you can, do it 4, 5, even up to 7 times in the week. The wonderful thing about yoga is that it's not like cardio or weightlifting. You don't need to give your body a break in between yoga sessions. So if you can do it every day, go ahead and knock it out and do it every day. If you're on a more fitness-based program, so you're doing cardio and you're lifting weights, then you can use the Yoga Body Blast workout as a supplement workout, just to get in a little extra softer movement for your body. And then you can also use it as a recovery workout. So if you want to just do it 2 to 3 times a week to help you stretch and lengthen and create balance and flexibility, excellent. And we'll talk about all of this. It'll be different for every single one of you based on your body and your goals and your life. But yeah, we'll talk about this in the consult. So with that, guys, many blessings and namaste. And yeah, and then I'll see you soon here for week 2. All right.